I have been amiss. This is my book, The Manifold Destiny of Eddie Vegas. It's been reviewed very well, and it's been selling extremely well considering the way I'm selling it. A tiny press in Slovenia is selling mostly to people in the United States, although people from other countries have bought it. But I didn't know, being in Slovenia and being out of the groove, let's say, the American groove, North American, specifically United States American groove. There are other grooves in other parts of America. That's why you should always say United States of America, because if you talk about the American groove, a Peruvian is going to say, "Ah, man, he gets us." But I don't, because I don't really know much about the Peruvian groove. But a big part of the groove in literature these days, there are a lot of booktubes, book channels, and I think that's fantastic. But one thing I didn't know is that I'm holding it as still as I can. One thing I didn't know is trigger warnings are expected to prevent people from reading things that they would rather not read. And I'm not going to be thorough, but I am going to try to make up for some of the things that I did not trigger warn people about, readers of my book, The Manifold Destiny of Eddie Vegas. I have to go chapter by chapter because there are quite a few. Chapter 1, the title, I have to trigger warn you that there's an F word in it, and it ends with ucking. Kino. Chapter 2 is the same title, so I have to warn you about redundancy. Inside those chapters, there are cliches, and there's sarcasm about the cliches. I think that's enough for 2 chapters, or this will take all night. Chapter 3 is the handmade visible. There is, trigger warnings. There is nipple. There is vagina, objectification of women, gambling, cheating, nipple toggling. There's the man versus nature. There's nature versus nurture, and nurture wins. There's batting of frogs. There's a great deal of frog abuse in that chapter. A lot of frogs die, and it's graphic frog deaths. Chapter 4, there's I'm not sure what to call it. I used to know there's a really good word, starts with a T, I think, but therianthropic. Yeah, there's therianthropy, and it may be misleading. There are fish brutalized by bears, or by one bear, and there are humans, or one human, brutalized by a bear. It's graphic. There is the suggestion of moderate drug use, accidental, and I guess we're going into chapter 6 there as well. So let me just go back to chapter 5, which is called After the Deluge. There's drinking of alcohol, scotch, and there is peer pressure and friendship between men, and it is suggestive enough that one might think that they're heterosexuals. Then there's Hector Gets His Odyssey is chapter 6. There is the meeting of peoples who don't understand each other. There is the use of the word engine, and there are engines portrayed realistically. There is the making of fire and the instructional use on the making of fire. And if you have young children, that might not be for them. There's wolf attacks, which might be construed as anti-wolf, Um, uh, whew, boy, a pagan friendship. Again, we have our friends. Then we have uh, the same two guys. And I won't say any more because I don't want to trigger. Oh, there's drinking. Um, Late night drinking after drinking. There's drinking of wine, port wine, cheap port wine. And really, if you're going to drink port wine, I think you should drink a good port wine. And don't drink too much. In the book, it's unclear, except it's pretty clear. There's some sloppiness. Um, there are books on beds and or books on a bed. There's sort of a suggestive. There's a cab ride that has in it suggestive thinking that could be attributed to lack of sleep or acid. It could be an acid trip, um, and the book doesn't tell you, so you could go wrong there. All right, 8 phoning home is a very short chapter, but it is a dark portrayal of family life, and it may be anti-female because the more coddled character is the boy, not the girl. Um, though my personal opinion is she was right to hang up. That's just the way things are. Once a family is in trouble, it's in trouble, and you can't actually blame the youngest daughter. Okay. 9 is mysteries. I have to warn you there that the narrator steps in and and goes on and on about how much he likes the two men in his two male characters. He's surprised by that. Um, and then there's chapter 10, which is called Fort Vancouver. Um, there is a lot of Indian stuff. There's a mockery of Indian language, although it's not meant to mock their language. It's more meant to mock the white people. But then again, it's mocking a certain type of person. The white men in Indian territory are actually mocked in that chapter, and I use language. Also, if you have fear of palindromes, you want to avoid that chapter entirely because there are a lot of palindromes in it. Chapter 11 is by Aeroplane to the Old World. Now, aeroplane is not a modern word, so if you have a problem with old versions of words, you might want to skip that. If it has a little bit of a suggestion of old history, which is by now rewritten many times over. The Old and New World are not called that so much anymore, but this in the very title says the Old World. So they go to Belgium, where there's a statue of a little boy who's naked and pissing. It's called Mannequin Piss by the Belgians, and it is frankly a little bit disturbing to a lot of people. It isn't real urine; it's a fountain, but anybody sensitive to pissing statuary is going to be, going to have some imagery put in their minds and will probably have trouble sleeping after that. Rendezvous plural. Now that's a wild chapter about the Wild West, and it tells a lot of wild stories. And it reminds me of, I forgot gunplay. There's gunplay and brutality and cursing in Fort Vancouver, and in Rendezvous plural. There's also an acrostic that suggests that a certain bad man was murdered, and it doesn't suggest it; it states it in his sleep, and it does so approvingly. So it's basically pro-murder. rendezvous, plural. Um, there's a family meeting in chapter 13, same family. It's called Diplomacy in the White Room. And the book, as well as the characters in the book that the book is more concerned with, um, blame. There's a husband and a wife, and it ultimately it's not very easy on the husband, but the wife takes more abuse and more blame. Um, and the characters that I based them on in real life, I blame the woman because I witnessed a lot of really ugly behavior. So some of that ugly behavior is reflected in this chapter. So I have to warn you against ugly behavior. I have to warn you against um dystopic families, against overly white rooms that only certain people can go in. And it's not a racial thing, it's just a white room, and that shows dirt more easily. Um, then the next two chapters are called He Horse. One of them combines poker and sex, um, as if to approve of gambling and fornication. Um, there's one called 16 is called Picasso Tits. That's the nickname that the two men in the um, more or less present of the book, because the book also has its historical side. These modern day characters have one of them both fall in love with the same woman, and she's actually the center of the book. So in those of you men who are sensitive to strong women characters, Picasso Tits is the heart of this book, and that might be disturbing to you. Um, and she knows they call her Picasso Tits, but her real name is Setif, which is my way of paying homage to the Algerians. So again, you have an anti-colonial, for those of you who are colonial or post-colonial and like colonialism. You're not going to like that, but you might miss it because of the Picasso Tits. And that's an homage to Roberto Arlt. And if you don't like Roberto Arlt, I want to give you a trigger warning here, because um, this book honors Roberto Arlt in several little ways. Not as much as some other books that I've written, but yeah. The Oregon Trail. That's a historical chapter. So those of you who are unnerved by the history of the United States, there's some things you might not know about it. Some of the brutality, some of the suffering. There is some violence in that chapter. There is nudity. There's men bathing in naked and washing in cold streams. There's the apparent shooting of a mountain goat that actually isn't. The goat fell after being shot at. But anyway, that's, oh God, we're at 13 minutes, and well, I think we're going to have to stop here because there are 56 chapters, and I'll just wait and see if you need more trigger warnings. I mean, there's a lot there. People who are nervous about certain letters, like if you can't stand F's and G's, they just drive you wild. There's a whole chapter in here where it's almost nothing but F and G. I mean, not even. I don't know if I use fucking. Sorry, I didn't trigger warn you there, but I don't think I do. But there's a lot of like flying the grief stricken is the name of the next chapter, which is playing on this chapter with the F's and the G's, and that's also connected to prostitution, which the book generally takes a disinterested view of, and that might be offensive to you as well. So anyway, please, we're almost up to 15 minutes. Please get back to me with anything you have to say. I need to know if I need to do another one or two of these.